I guess I'm here with Dan here today, who is part of the CoverDrop team, I suppose.
Yeah.
One of the authors of the paper. Is with several people, or like how many other authors are there, and you worked on it with other people?
Yeah, thanks, Guy. So we have 5 people in total who worked on it, mostly because it took a long time. This was like, I think, 2018 when we started.
Yeah.
So it's Mansoor, Diana, Alistair, Ross, and myself.
And can you explain kind of the broad concept behind it, or like give a short intro into it?
Yeah, sure. So the main idea is that we build a tool that helps whistleblowers making initial contact with journalists. And one of the main problems is that technologies like Tor make you stand out. They're a huge red flag. If someone in a company blows the whistle on something and they're the only one using Tor, might not even be necessary to figure out like who did they actually talk to, but that can already create an uncomfortable situation for them. So the idea is that we embed CoverDrop within the news reader app, so an app that already millions of people have installed. So we start with a pretty large anonymity set, and we benefit from that large user base. And then we use the classical cover traffic, encrypted storage to give you very strong plausible deniability in case someone comes and talks to you, forces you to operate the device, or confiscates it.
Yeah. And I understand you also did some like research studies talking to journalists as well.
Yeah.
Can you explain some of the findings that came out of those? Like, what were journalists telling you about communicating with their sources?
Yeah. So this is one of the reasons why it took such a long time. For us, it was really important that we don't like build a technology, try to find a problem, and then kind of marry them together. What we had is 2 workshops. One that was very explorative, that we took to generate ideas, and the second one to verify them. And to question some of the findings that we had is that often the sources and potential sources don't know yet whether they would actually leak information or reach out to journalists, but they might get into initial contact, and then they get more frustrated, and eventually they leak information. Problem there is they usually start that conversation with the journalist on a more insecure channel. And then it's really hard later to upgrade that because you already have the metadata of the initial contact. So what the journalists really were looking for is something where people, even if they're not sure if they want to be whistleblowers, have an easy way to reach out, and it starts on the highest level.
Yeah.
And then you can always downgrade your security and your privacy in that regard, but not upgrade. And that's why CoverDrop, even though it doesn't like allow uploading documents, doesn't allow like lots of large messages, it still works because it provides this high security entry level, and then you can see where you go from there.
Yeah. So I wonder how you kind of envision that happening with an actual source. Say, for example, I had a bunch of documents that I wanted to provide to a media organization. Would I start the conversation then using CoverDrop and then move to a more like bandwidth intensive or like a higher bandwidth service at a later point? Like, how do you see that kind of playing out?
So that would be pretty much the process. So you would use CoverDrop to reach out, probably say, got information on this, and this is like the reason why I'm motivated to do that, and then the next step would be on the journalist. And usually for them it's really important to verify that the source is actually who they claim to be. So they want to verify, okay, can I trust the source? Are they actually giving me legit documents? But they also have responsibility to keep the source safe.
Yeah.
So they will probably, if they can, meet in person, so you can then already do a handover in that situation.
Yeah, okay.
And if that doesn't work, they could then instruct them to use, for instance, CoverDrop to upload a lot of documents over Tor. Maybe tell them, do it into an internet cafe in a different town,
Yeah.
or just go even more analog to prevent all the subtleties that are hard to understand for non-technical people, and just say, well, create photocopies, put them in an envelope, drive to the next town, throw it in the mail,
Yeah.
and that is...
or mail me like a USB stick or something like
yeah,
that.
something like that.
Yeah.
That's usually a good thing, because it's very understandable about what happens, how the adversaries can interact with everything. So
Yeah. Okay. And in terms of deploying this in an actual media organization, I think you said in the talk that you gave that there needs to be some sort of physical infrastructure there, or can you explain how a news media organization would deploy this service?
So basically there are two parts to it. The one part is the CoverDrop library that's integrated in the Newsread app, and the other part is the mix node that is at the news organization. That has one important job, and that is because everyone sends all the cover traffic all the time, it needs to filter out, okay, what are the actual real messages and what are the cover traffic. So that's the main job it does. It then collects them for an epoch, uploads them, and then the journalists can see which ones they can decrypt, which means they're supposed to go to that journalist. And compared to like a normal mixed network where you usually have multiple mixers because you never really trust a single mixed node operator, we can get away with a single mixed node here because ideally the whistleblower trusts the news organization. And then, in our implementation we go a bit more detailed because if we're especially talking about regimes, they might just raid the news organization building, try to take possession of the service. So we use, for instance, trusted execution environments as an additional layer of defense. So like the key which can check if it's dummy or cover traffic or real messages, that one is protected, can't be easily extracted.
Inside of the enclave.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm interested on the enclave part, like are you using Intel SGX? I mean, that this seems to be the most common.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so that's what we use. Like basically everything in the cover node that's critical runs in the enclave. Which means it's also kind of like a bottleneck.
Well, that's what I was like, performance-wise, like is there any like trade-off here in terms of news apps are downloaded by millions and millions of people and you're having this cover traffic being sent constantly? Did you have performance numbers on how many messages you can handle on that node before it?
So we took like the download numbers from like the Google Play Store as like rough indicators, and we were planning with 1 message per hour. And what we find is that we usually can get away with up to like the maximum we would need is 7 cover nodes.
Okay.
Then you like can also handle the peaks and everything quite well. It's not super latency critical, so you don't really need to like over provision to get like super low latency because it's already taken an hour to send a message. But like SGX is sufficiently quick, especially if you just do like a simple check with your private key. Can it decrypt? Can I decrypt? Can I decrypt? They get quite a good throughput.
And in terms of future directions for like what you're doing, do you see future directions in research? I know you said also that you're working with an unnamed media organization in terms of integration. Is that the main thing you're looking at right now, or are there other future research directions you want to look into too?
There are a lot of points that came up. And it's of course always like you design the system, you work through, like we looked a bit of usability elements, but then if you do the actual implementation, a lot of new questions arise. One, for instance, if you run no CoverDrop in the news app, then you run in the same process space as all the third-party libraries in there, which can potentially weaken your assumptions because you don't necessarily control all the source code there. And especially news organizations often link with like advertisement libraries, try to understand what's happening, all the analytics of it. So you need to be careful about what you do there.
Is the thought here some sort of side channel attack, like in
Yes,
terms of.
side channel or like even directly malicious code.
Okay.
Because it's the same process base, can just read the memory if they like.
Right, I see.
And the other end comes more from like the feedback we got from the journalists that, for instance, even with existing methods, for instance, spam is a big problem. Especially if people want to harass journalists or try to send illegal material to them to get them in trouble, then that's something we need to deal with. So in our initial design, it's not incorporated, but what you would want to have is some kind of a front desk system where you can have one person receives everything, there's like a triage, and then sends it to the individual journalist to follow up on. I think from what we heard, that would be extremely important to actually make it usable in practice.
And I don't know how much you can talk about the deployment, but how is that going in terms of like, are they integrating your libraries, or it's in the testing stages? Like,
I mean, our library, as they are online now, they are like an academic project, right? It works, it does all the operations, but it doesn't necessarily bring like the right engineering practices and standards that you can actually bring this to like millions of people. So our work would first consist of revisiting the protocol and the things that I mentioned, like the front desk support and such. That's something we need to incorporate and then go and actually implement everything on a level that can be worked on with like large teams. It's tested, it's automated, it's open source, and that would just take time. It's like they're more of an engineering thing rather than a research thing.
I understand. So what can people do if they want to find out more about CoverDrop? Is there somewhere they can follow it, the progress of it, or follow you personally?
Well, I think easiest thing is just to Google CoverDrop and read the paper, and our emails are in there. We're always like super happy to chat, especially if you have like ideas for future research, have any similar projects that are interesting. And then we have our GitHub. It's also linked from the paper. I think that's the best way to get in contact with us and learn more.
Awesome, sounds good. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah, cheers. Bye bye.